After the Florida game, Dan Hurley was visibly emotional when I asked about Alex, Hassan, and Samson, but those tears have since turned into fuel for next season's run. Welcome and thank you for making the HoopsCat Pod part of your daily routine, your home for UConn men's and women's basketball. We're available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Big East Energy Network where passion meets precision. If you've noticed that the HoopsCat Pod is not showing up on Apple, we're working on that. There's a few things behind the scenes that I need to tweak, but you can always find it on Big East Energy Network. If you look that up on your Apple, I think it's on Spotify, no problem. Before we dive into today's show, we want to take a moment to say how grateful we are for all of you guys. We literally started all of this last Thursday morning, essentially. Wednesday, we did a Big East, what's now the Big East Energy Network, but we started that as a standalone, just a Big East podcast that we're gonna start, and started that channel. And right now, as we speak, we have over 2,000 subscribers in just a week. And we're crushing it. We're proud to say we're the only daily podcast on the HoopsCat Pod that is covering UConn men's and women's basketball, and that will likely stay that way, the hoops capital of the world, and we're thrilled to bring you the coverage you deserve. Okay, so after the NCAA tournament loss to Florida, I had the pleasure of being there. The irony of all of this is when I was employed as a 1099 for Locked On UConn, I had a credential, and I don't know if I have it somewhere. I don't think I have it here. If I can find it, I'll put it on the screen at one point. And it said Locked On Oklahoma. That's what my media credential said. That always cracked me up because my last true media credential with Locked On wasn't even with Locked On UConn. And so maybe that was an omen. But that being said, it allowed me the opportunity to ask this question to Dan Hurley.
Can you just talk about briefly what each of these guys meant to your program, Alex, Samson, and Hassan?
They change your life. I mean, men like that change your life. I mean, I was a coach. I don't know necessarily. I was on the hot seat going into 23. You got to ask Dave Benedict. But until these men, until Alex Karaban put on the uniform, and Samson, the players change your life when you have such special people.
And honestly, guys, no bullshit. I was sitting there in the front row. It's the elevated platform. You have Dan Hurley above you, kind of, lording over all of the media. Did that for everybody. And the players just left. And when I asked him that question, it wasn't the intention of making him cry. It was giving him an opportunity to talk about how special this team was and how special it was to him. Because he talked about how much they meant to him versus – say last year's team, he said, they had a bunch of assholes on that team. And that's okay. That's why they won. Not a lot of killers on last year's current team, although against Florida, they look like the embodiment of a Dan Hurley team. And so what I took from that is, Florida knocks them off, ending 1,102-day March Madness win streak. When you look at it from the perspective of that's how long they did not lose a game in the NCAA tournament. And what I find about them is that this guy's a two-time national champion, a fiery tactician who's turned Stores into a hoops fortress. And I toss him a question, nothing crazy. Tears up, talking about Alex, Hassan, Samson, how they change your life. And they're 100% about that loss to Florida, but also how he loved these guys. Like most of them, those three in particular, had been there for, Haas, the least of them, but Alex 4 years, Samson 4 years. Samson's graduating. Hassan's clock, his eligibility clock is gone. Alex, we'll talk about him later and his potential to return, but at that moment, it's looking like NBA bound. And the toughest part, Hurley doesn't get a moment to really process that. Like, I'm sitting there, tears welling up in my face because I love this UConn basketball program. Like, it doesn't matter to me that I cover it. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I had a really hard time sitting in that press conference and not looking like a blubbering idiot. That took a lot of strength, at least for my purposes. And, Hurley doesn't get that moment. And so I certainly don't, because, we're talking about daily shows. The season's over, and the grind just keeps coming. The portal opened literally the next day. Recruiting, making sure all 4 of those guys are good to go. That we're going to talk about reloading the dynasty in the third segment. And, Florida came out and won that game, whatever, but that's not the point. He loved these kids. They changed his life, and now he's staring at the end of something with no time to sit with it. And you fast forward to April 2nd, yesterday, and the storm's shifting from the frustration and the conversation he had on 60 Minutes about 50% of his team is probably going to leave. The core is holding tough. Jalen Stewart comes back. Solo Ball announces he's returning. And reported yesterday that Silas Demary Jr. has 1 foot ready to go in stores. I wrote a piece on this in the Hoops Capital of the World. If you want to check that out, I'm going to put the website and let it scroll across. There it is right now. It's scrolling across the screen. hoopscapitaloftheworld.substack.com. And go check that out. I don't think that's clickable, but a lot of great pieces on there. And that's the most recent one, obviously. So, this kid who played Florida a bunch this year, ready to rock. We get that potential that he's coming. We get that potential that there's a point guard that he feels comfortable, right? UConn took a huge swing on Aiden, and they didn't hit on that. I'm sure there's folks that likely think our season is different if we let Kobe Bryant come versus Aiden. Not sure about the scenario there. I've heard multiple different stories of that Kobe wanted to come, but Aiden committed first, and then that's kind of like Dan's MO about who's more committed. But that doesn't matter because it's in the past. Kentucky lost too. One round later. It is what it is, right? So the portal's looming, but and all of these commitments, whether they're returning like Solo and like Jalen, are really what they are, which is re-recruiting your players. So my tears and Dan's tears from March 23rd and plenty of UConn players could really turn that into the fuel that is needed to hang tight with this core and this budding dynasty that Dan's got, because no matter what happens in San Antonio this week, UConn's won 2 of the last 3 national championships. So hang tight. We're going to talk about me owning my misses on this show in other places, because I always say I'm going to. I'm going to take this off because, guys, there's reasons behind this. I don't want to be wrong, but in this case, this segment is literally branded "Happy to be wrong," and we're going to talk about that coming up after the break. All right, welcome back. So last week on the pod, I put some predictions out there that leaned on sources. I usually bet my entire house and, pretty much anything that I value. And no, it wasn't Tashid Carr, Twitter trolls. Although if he did tell me something, I'd listen. The guy's been around more basketball than some of the people who monitor shows for, essentially like what they get right and what they get wrong. But nonetheless, I took some L's, right? I will always own up to them. So let's break it down, as I've said, in this branded segment. Happy to be wrong. What's so funny to me is people have this need to be right. I do not have such a need. And I know that those people, I used to when I was younger. I think some people will laugh because they probably have had arguments with me on Twitter, and you think that you know everything. It's like, no, man, I'm just telling you my opinion. You can have a separate opinion and not like it, and that's fine. That's kind of how ideas and people formulate their opinions. And unless you send me like these are facts, like the things that I said to you, what I believed to be true and what I believed was going to happen didn't happen. So these are now irrefutable facts that you have to come back and say I was wrong. If an opinion, like on the women's side, when I say I think Sarah Strong is the most impactful player that UConn has, just because of what she provides Paige in the respect of spacing and whatnot, and she's probably the most impactful freshman they've had since Maya Moore. Some people don't like that, and that's okay. That's okay. That's an opinion. And if you want to talk about you can break down stats, anybody can use stats to help their opinion in any way, shape, or form. So an opinion based off of what you watch and what you see sometimes is just that. So let's get back to the topic at hand. First up, solo ball. The kid's an electric guard and playmaker, 6'10" wingspan. I had him pegged for testing the NBA waters, according to that source. Testing the draft, chasing that pro dream, potentially coming back, because I did say that on the podcast. Well, he's back. He posted that now Michael Jordan-esque meme, I'm back. I also think we don't really need to continue to do that every time. If you're on the team, you're on the team. If you tested the waters, cool. But if you never entered the portal, we just kind of will assume that you're back, right? Can we just all agree on that? Anyway, then as we move forward, there's Jalen Stewart. Sophomore forward, averaged just under 18 minutes a game. I thought he gave us the athleticism that Dan essentially wanted most of the year, but I think he felt like there was defensive lapses, just not being as consistent as he wants to be. But Jamar, who I love, I've only met him once, but I've interacted with him on Twitter, and it was great. He sends that video walking out of the building in Raleigh, essentially what felt like goodbye. So we're all just reading the tea leaves. I wasn't the only one. And then he posts, hey guys, relax. That was just us being grateful to UConn. You guys made us feel like family. And that I get, I think Don Mileto, my former basketball coach, reached out to him on Twitter and said, yeah, man, you can't, if you post stuff like that, every UConn person alive is going to think that's you guys are moving on, because it's just kind of I don't live in New England anymore, but that's just New England DNA. You automatically go to the worst. And I've gotten better at that, but that felt like, an emotional, I'm out. And it turns out it's more of a thank you note and a gratitude. So not a goodbye. So I guess I'm over 2 there, laughing and smiling as I walked that back, because didn't want Solo or Jalen to go anywhere. And honestly, you have the source that I showed that those text messages or whatever said Aiden was going to go. He left. So that's 1 for 3. I know that everyone thought that he was going to come back, but there was definitely some talk in the building of him coming back, and he feels like he needs to move on. Cool. Still haven't heard about Jaden Ross. I'm sure that is going to be, I think I said that was 50-50 according to the source. But now the big one, right? Tarris Reed. This is looking like potentially the gaffe of the week. In last week's show, go check it out. It's at the 11:07 mark. And I'm quoted as saying Tarris Reed Jr., a former top 30 recruit, is expected to enter the transfer portal. That is likely not happening. Sources, not just mine, were talking about it, whether it had to do with Baylor or some other folks. I said Michigan didn't coach him right. He was too finesse for a 6'10", 265-pound frame. UConn wanted him to be molded after the Klingon and Sonogo-esque situation with those feet, pair him with Samson, really match any front court with physicality and speed, which they did for most of the year. But, he wasn't consistent. They didn't really, when Dan had to multiple times in the media kind of call him a grizzly bear, and people are sending him these memes, he had flashes like that Providence game, absolute monster. He was the Big East Sixth Man of the Year, had incredible games where he was dominating with defensive blocks. He had a knack for offensive rebounding, is something he brought from Michigan. but it wasn't consistent, right? Was it the confidence? Was it the scheme fit, the mentality? I don't know. Either way, you don't want to lose a talent like Tarris at that size. And I don't want him to go. So if he is indeed coming back, and people can dunk on me all they want, I'm literally giving you the clip to go get it. Go get it. Put it together. Put L's. I'll give you this right here. I'll smile. You can screenshot this and you can put it on a meme. If it's an incorrect source, this is a gaffe of the week in that respect. Now, he's trending towards staying. Hopefully, anchoring the paint that Samson is leaving. But for me, I'm done trusting whispers and text messages from people, no matter how strong the sense is. Unless Dan Hurley calls me himself or pings my phone, I'm done with that. But here's where it gets juicy. Alex Karaban, a.k.a. the Brain Center, his draft stock has slipped a little bit. And I think, scouts wanted to see more scoring pop against better competition and against defenses that were now keying on him. And that dipped. So I think he's going to come back. That's an opinion. That's not a source thing. That's not anything. But I also did a show on Locked On where essentially I said, he's done really all he can in college. So maybe that's what it is. I mean, he's had an intense 4 years because he was there before he even played as a redshirt freshman. So maybe he doesn't want to come back. And I don't mean that like he doesn't love UConn. Maybe he's just done with it and he'll go pro and figure it out. But I mean, I think Alex is a pretty pragmatic guy, and I think he ends up coming back, right? And you think about this core: Solo, Jay Stu, Tarris, Alex, and then potentially with Silas coming in as a point guard for them as a transfer. And then think about it this way: Alex would get that kind of silky smooth jumper back now that he's not the focal point on offense. And then NBA teams can actually look at him for what he's going to be in the NBA. I've never understood why people are like, well, he's not an NBA player. He's 1,000% an NBA player. Do you think the Lakers, if they sign Alex Karaban, are now going to hand the offense over to him? No. He becomes a piece. He becomes someone that comes off the bench, hits 2 or 3 threes because he's open. And trust me, in the NBA, you get open looks because if you're the 5th or 7th or 9th option on the team, they're going to want to stop the LeBrons, the Lucas, the Kyrie Irvings, the whoever, before they're worried about Alex Karaban. Like, it's so silly to think that Alex wouldn't be an NBA player or a potential first-round pick when a guy like, I was about to say Cole Hauser from Yellowstone. Who's the Boston Celtics guy? It's Hauser, I believe, right? That shot like 45% from 3, but mostly because he's wide open. Because they're worried about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and he was just on a championship team. That's what NBA teams need to see. Is they need to see that Alex Karaban. They need to see him filled with NBA talent the way he was the year before and the year before that on back-to-back national championships, and what he truly is, which is the best role player in college basketball. Hell, Draymond Green's a role player, and he's going to be in the Basketball Hall of Fame at some point because he plays defense and he has a basketball IQ. I don't think Draymond's winning any athletic contests, and he's certainly not winning any shooting contests. So Alex 100% has a chance. Everyone chill on that. Now let's get into the Silas Demary Jr. He comes in potentially. Like this is all not for certain. Like he is not officially committed. I hope when I'm done with this podcast, I send it out and we get word all day today that he is signing and we get that official word. Silas is a 6'5", 195-pound point guard from Georgia. We got crystal balls from 247 on 3. I checked in with a couple of people that do this professionally for The Athletic and for 247, just a different region. And I got back. It's done. I got back, confident to say that prediction is correct. So that's what we have right now. He averaged 13.5 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, shot 37.4% from 3. He attacked the rim for 158 free throw attempts. That's what they love about him. He's essentially Tristan Newton 2.0 from just the body makeup and his ability to get to the rack. Big, physical, runs the show, can switch on defense. He's not going to get pushed around. whether he's going downhill or pulling up from three. And remember, when Aiden Mahaney came in as a transfer, all that, first team WCC hype, he only scored 4.5 points a game. Lost in the Big East, meat grinder, where essentially he was being pushed around. And Demary is potentially the upgrade we've been begging for. But let's zoom out of the roster churn a little bit. Freshman Ahmad Noel, Isaiah Abraham, and then sophomore Yusuf Singari, none of who cracked the rotation meaningfully. They're out, clearing space for the number 3 recruiting class in the country with Braylon Mullins, Darius Adams, Jacob Furphy, and Eric Ryba. Mullins and Adams are both shooters. I think 40% from 3 off the dribble. Furphy's got length upside, 6'7" with a nose for the ball. Ryba's obviously a skilled, big, 7 feet, soft hands, great feet, can step back. Pairs with Reed like a dream. And then there's Jaden Ross. We talked about him briefly in the last segment. Is he going to stay? Who knows? But that's another potential weapon in Hurley's arsenal, someone that's already been in the system for a couple of years, someone that could put on some weight. I'll give him all my extra weight, and he can add 10, 15 pounds of muscle, and he'd be a terror. But we'll see. Are there more pieces in the puzzle? So let's say Silas commits today. We're diving into that next on the Hoops Guy. All right, welcome back to the Hoops Cat Pod, your only source for daily UConn men's and women's basketball. And about that, the only variation that you'll see from me here on my own is if I go on vacation, there may be subs. There may be a day where I'm sick and I can't get someone to cover for me, and you just don't get a podcast. But that's life. But it should be a part of your daily routine. There's going to be plenty of content for you guys to check out. So, but we're in the home stretch. UConn's roster is looking like it's potentially humming. The core is essentially back, a few caveats aside. Silas, the portal prize, potentially, again. Check out those 247 and On 3 crystal ball predictions. Both are very credible sources. And if you look at their percentage rates of when they get things right, the On 3 guy, Tipton, rarely misses any of that. And I believe it was Travis Barnham. I think he's like 98%, something like that. The irony is he actually got one wrong the other day with the kid from San Diego State, Guath. I guess like he eventually, I think he was going to go to Kentucky, but then he took less to stay home. I got that from our buddy Aaron Torres. But, it is what it is, man. But Hurley's not the type to kick back with a coffee and call it a day. Just the portal's open through April 22nd. I know they have certain targets. I don't think they're going to go right up to that. But does he stand pat after he gets Silas potentially? Or, with the new guys coming in, does he kind of get developmental pieces because he knows Jay Stu and Solo and potentially Tarris are back? Maybe Alex is back. So that's where it's kind of like a catch-22. But two names leap off the page for me. It's Amarri Monroe from Quinnipiac and Mackenzie Mgbako from Indiana. Monroe is a 6'7" forward and MAC player of the year. He averaged 18.1 points and 9.1 rebounds. A stat line that screams Hurley guy, mid-major dude. He's rugged, versatile. Think about what it's like to go from a mid-major and then potentially to UConn in the same state where you were the MAC player of the year. Now you get to showcase your talents to the hoops capital of the world. And essentially, maybe take that to an NBA level. Who knows? I know he's undersized, but so is everybody in the pros right now. I mean, did you see some of the players in the McDonald's All-American game? They look like babies. They're like all 6'9", 6'8", and they all have, arms like pipe cleaners, like the size of my wrist, all the way up. And they kind of look very, like you could push them over with a strong gust of wind. So a guy like this could really take advantage of some of these teams that don't have the girth and the physicality that you need to be a really good rebounder. And really, I'll take a bruiser like this who can score and actually has a knack for offensive rebounding from a mid-major, because that's just desire. And this guy definitely has it. So, he could be a high impact reserve, spelling Jay Stu or Jay Ross. He may get more run than that. And then, dude's a dog. We need, what's our boy Dan Meehan saying? Like, we need some dogs, man. It's that quote from Dan Hurley's press conference. Andre Jackson ran everywhere. We need that. We don't need everybody to be a 40% shooter. But then there's this guy, Mackenzie Mgbako, the 6'8" stretch 3-4. UConn offered him in 2021. He committed to Duke. Then he went to decommitted from there and went to Indiana. Great decision. In 2 years, he shot 40.4% from three. His first year, I think last year, it dipped a little bit. But he's a beast. He's got athleticism. He's a former 5-star. He's got a knack for scoring. He's another guy that can just go get you a bucket if you need it. I think Mgbako is a dream target, a piece that turns into a damn good team into a juggernaut if you get a guy like this. Because just think about like the teams that are in the Final Four today. Every one of those teams has multiple dudes who you can throw the ball to when your offense breaks down, and they can go get you a bucket. And so did our national championship teams. It wasn't just Tristan. It wasn't just Steph. It wasn't just, Andre Hawkins. It wasn't just Andre Jackson. Like, it wasn't just Joey California. Like, here I'm just saying names. Like, there were options, and everyone played a role. But you do need those guys, Cam Spencer, that you can just get the ball to, and they can go create. And Mgbako is definitely one of those dudes. So when we go back to that March 23rd and Hurley's tears were for Florida, that performance that fell flat down the stretch, the guys he loved facing uncertain futures for probably a lot of those dudes. Samson graduating, Haas graduating, graduate student running out of eligibility. Karaban was teary-eyed, no time to reflect, just the grind. So now the soul of the team looks like it's intact. Silas from the portal from Georgia looks like he's the prize, and the talent is getting deeper than ever. Picture this. Demary steering the attack, Solo cutting through, Store or Mgbako or Amarri crashing the rebounds, Karaban stretching the defense because now he's going to be more wide open than ever, Tarris Reed playing inside and literally owning the glass. Then you add Braylon Mullins and Darius Adams as playmaking, especially Mullins, shooting from three. Jay Ross potentially getting better and flying in for lobs. Maybe Eric Riba giving you 10, 12 minutes a game where he's essentially a pick and pop guy. It's the DNA of Hurley's title teams, but this seems nastier. So what's next? If Silas commits, then those predictions are starting to stack like pancakes or dominoes, and the Big East better brace itself because Hurley's tears weren't a breakdown or a frustration. They were fuel. No pause, just push. All gas, no brakes. Foot stays on gas. Stores is reloading, and the Huskies are clawing at another title. I'll be back tomorrow tracking more portal stuff. Monroe, Mgbako, whoever. Whatever moves Hurley's cooking, hit me with your thoughts on X. This roster has got me hype. We're out. Go Huskies.